My name's Sabrina Ramonov, and in this video, we're going to start building our MVP for AI-powered remixing of social media content. And just to recap at a high level what we're building, eventually the platform will be able to connect to social media sources and repurpose or remix the content using your personal brand, personal knowledge base, and then publish to social media platforms in an automated weekly queue. In the first video in this series, we significantly scoped down the spec to something that we can actually build for an MVP. And by the way, I think that can vary depending on your technical skill level and what resources you have access to. So if you're super technical, you can probably build out a lot more features than what we are going to build out in this spec V1. If you're not technical, then that's when I really recommend trimming down the spec as much as possible, rely heavily on your domain expertise and feedback from your potential users to figure out what is the tiny core that you can build in a short period of time that would provide value. If you're super technical and you're comfortable bringing in a lot more features in the MVP, then go ahead and do that. Just make sure you don't take too long, right? The goal is to get this in the hands of actual users as quickly as possible. In the previous video, we talked about taking the spec, kind of simplifying it with just the one screen we're going to build out first, the create screen, where you remix content from one source, one text source, to another piece of text. And this is the AI updated version of the spec. Remember, we fed it through Claude to get feedback on how to update the spec. And here I made some additional changes as well. So everything in blue is what I've added, and everything in red is what I'm going to remove when I feed it into Cursor AI to start building out the code. And let's walk through this real quick. So in the past week, I've already built multiple apps using Cursor and Claude artifacts, and I noticed that initially there were a couple things that it would always kind of trip up on, and that are super easy to fix if you just tell it that. And so for future MVPs and stuff, like I always want to specify this. We're going to use Next.js, TypeScript, Tailwind, CSS, and App Router. Like this is our tech stack. We want to make sure we're using App Router when creating new screens. Do not use a source directory. If you remember from the second video when we actually set up the repo, there were all these options. We just selected the default options, but we want to make sure the AI knows that. So it has the context of like what framework we're using, what tools we're using, and it should follow that framework so that everything's consistent. Here I also add always show the proposed directory structure and new files that must be created. This is really helpful because Cursor AI will just be like, create this new file. It may not be super clear where you should create that file. And so I like to be explicit, like show me how the directory structure is updated as we create or edit or delete files. And then I even ask for each step to specify the file name and path. And then here is another issue that I noticed. Again, I've built multiple MVPs now with Cursor and Claude artifacts this past week. Oftentimes it would forget to include this line, use clients, in components that require client-side state. And so I'm just including it here. It just makes it easier when you spin up a project if it does that from the get-go, so we don't have to go in there and fix it. It's a super easy fix, but it's just one of those things, like why not just include it in the prompt? And then these two things are more specific to Tailwind. So when we build out just the UI section of the app, I like to include this and just make sure this just tells the AI very specifically, like our styling config is located in this file, so it knows. And just in general, I want to use like a modern color palette. I want to make sure text is readable. I've had this issue, for example, forget if it was the vampire security checkpoint game or whatever, but like sometimes the font would be white in a text input that is also white. So you couldn't read the text unless you highlighted it. So it's just one of those things that comes up, and we just want to make it clear from the beginning to follow this best practice. And then I added this as well just to be a bit more explicit. So the UI screen consists of the following sections. It's going to be navigation and the create screen. And then we just want to build the UI portion first, and then we're going to do the logic later, and we're going to tell it to use the attached mockup as a guideline. We kind of had that before. I just rephrased it. And then I also added, to make it clear, when the user opens the home page, the create screen is what they should be looking at. I want to talk a little bit about this. So typically, if you're building out an MVP, you typically want to think about the data model first. So like, how is your database base going to be structured, and then think about the UI screens, and then last think about the logic and user interactions. Since for our V1 we won't have a database yet, we're just going to build the UI portion first and then leave to-dos. So this is like, it's like a comment that reminds you to implement this stuff later. After the UI, we're going to build like the logic, user interactions, and workflows. Okay, so I just removed this and just reworded it here. Blah, blah, blah. And then in the navigation, I'm just going to remove these because we're not implementing that in our V1 anyway. I left dashboard so that we have like one other link as an example in the sidebar. And then I also removed ensure responsive design. Again, really not in scope for V1. From the create screen, I removed error handling and input validation. Again, this is all great, just really not necessary for V1. So these two items are the UI screens that we're going to focus on building first. So I'm going to feed this into Cursor first. And then after that, we're going to feed the logic portions of the prompt. So how we generate the content, display the content, and allow for editing. And again, these items in red, I'm removing from the prompt, from the spec. Remember that Claude suggested this improved version of the spec when we asked for it. And so that's why these were included and kind of added to the spec. And it's all definitely best practice that we should be thinking about, but just not necessary for V1 right now. Okay. And then same here. I didn't even think about the character count for each platform. Again, Claude is the one who suggested that, which is great, but just not in scope for V1. And we're not going to be connecting to social media accounts yet. Okay. And then before we get started, let's go set up our cursor. So make sure you open Cursor. You should already have a project called Remix. If you do not, so go to wherever you develop stuff and then run this command, npx create-next-app at latest. And then this is the name of your app. So it could be test, whatever it is that you want to build. And it's going to walk you through a set of questions and just hit enter for all of them. You're just going to use the default selection for all of them. Once you've done that, open the project you just created. In our case, it's called Remix. Okay. And then hit Command L to open the AI chat on this right-hand side. So the first thing we're going to do in Cursor is set up some rules. So go to Cursor here, settings, Cursor settings over here. And then here where it says rules for AI, these are rules that get shown to the AI on all chats and Command K sessions. So here are my rules, and I just grabbed these from the Cursor community forum. Share your rules for AI. And in this thread, people share kind of like their best practices, rules that they input for the AI. And sometimes it's project specific, tool specific. This, I think, is generic enough to include for like any project. So think step by step first, brainstorm first, describe your plan in detail, prioritize fixing errors rather than apologizing. If you can't implement something, make sure you add a to-do comment so we can find that later that it's a missing functionality. Return a completely edited file, and finally review the code, make sure it's complete and satisfies all requirements. So input that here, it should automatically save, and then you can go ahead and close that. And I'll have the copy-paste version of this in the newsletter accompanying this video, so just stay tuned for that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take our spec. First, let's remove the stuff in red so we don't copy-paste it. Copy-paste it, okay. And we're just gonna take this first section around building the UI screens. Once we're done with that, then we're gonna build out the logic, okay? So here in Ask Anything, copy-paste everything there. I'm just gonna add bullet points here. Okay, that looks good. Just double check everything. And then you want to hit Command Enter to chat with the entire code base. So the default here in Cursor is it feeds in your current open file as context. If you want to chat with the entire code base, though, like feeding in the entire code base as context into the prompt, then you do Command Enter. And this works well when your code base is still like pretty small. Again, we're starting from scratch here. As the code base gets larger and larger and we're adding individual features, we do want to limit the amount of context that we're sending because too much context can actually confuse the AI. And here is Cursor's response. You can always check what context was fed in if you expand this over here. And it's still generating the response, I believe, but we can start taking a look. So here's the directory structure, and then it's going to tell us like exactly what code to write in each file. So let's go ahead and just make sure we replicate the same directory structure. So we have another directory components with these files, another directory create, another directory dashboard, And then we should already have page and layout. Okay, so let's go ahead and replicate this structure. So within app, we're going to create a folder called components. And then that folder has 3 files, layout.tsx, sidebar.tsx, and topbar. Okay. And then we are going to create another folder called create, which has a file, page.tsx. And then we'll create another folder called dashboard. And dashboard is just a placeholder for now. I just wanted to have at least like one other link in the sidebar. Okay, cool. So let's just double check everything looks like the directory structure. We got app, components, so these files, creates, and we already have page.tsx here and layout.tsx, okay? So now we're gonna implement the components and pages step by step. So update app/layout, click apply here on the right-hand side, check the changes so you can accept or reject individual changes. In this case, we're gonna click accept, okay? Then we're going to create the app components layout.tsx. It's over here. So navigate to that file first. You can see here cursor didn't auto link to it because the file doesn't exist yet. So we're going to click to open the file and then apply the changes to this file. Okay, then click accept again. Make sure to save the file. Okay, now we're going to go to sidebar. So same thing, and then apply the changes. Click accept, hit save. Okay, same thing. Now go to top bar, apply the changes. Click accept, hit save. Okay, here, this page already existed before, so we're just going to navigate to it. Click accept, okay. And then this is a new page, app/create/page.tsx. So go there, click play. Okay, and then app dash, this is a new page as well. And again, this is just a placeholder, and it's nice that there's a to-do here, implement dashboard content. Because one of the things I like to do is throughout an entire project, I can list out all the to-do items in the project. So go ahead and let's read this. And just in general, I recommend being like a very active participant, even though this is AI-driven coding. Like I'm holding its hand quite a bit, and it's really important to like check that it's doing what we want. And even if you don't have a technical background, like you're brand new to all of this, I still recommend reading this because it's summarizing like what's going on, what it's trying to do. So it included a persistent left sidebar, top bar, a create screen with multi-line text input for the original content. Then you select the platform and then a generate content button, placeholder for the dashboard screen. And then it confirms that we're using Tailwind CSS and a nice color palette. And then these are the next steps in the implementation. So first, let's say, how do I run? First, let's like test that everything works. We should at least be able to see the UI. So here I'm asking cursor, how do I run the app? And basically you open a terminal. I really like warp.dev, the AI powered terminal, but within cursor, I usually use the built-in terminal so that I don't have to change screens. Everything's in one place. So let's just follow the instructions, npm install, okay? Start the development server. That's npm run dev, okay? You can see it here. And then you just click on the link. So command click on Mac. Okay, that's it. That's our UI, right? So we've got the persistent sidebar, switches to dashboard. This changes. The original content will go here, and then we're going to select the platforms here. So again, this is just the UI. We haven't implemented any logic or workflows yet. Now what we want to do is implement like the next part. And I'm going to copy this section because this is, I want to make sure that cursor like always has the context of what stack we're using. In my experience so far this past week, it's just the results are much better if I just am very explicit. This is the framework I'm using. These are the options within that framework I'm using. This is where like key things are located. And so this is the part that I will use again in this prompt to create the logic. You don't really need this stuff because this is more like the UI facing part. What we want to do is actually take this stuff. Oh, hang on. Let me remove the items in red first. So again, we're just reducing the scope even further, which I know is painful, but it's quite necessary. Again, the more technical you are, if you're comfortable with adding in spec, that's totally fine. Just don't let it be an excuse for not launching and getting this in the hands of users. Okay, so here's the spec. Let's add some bullets. Okay, and then let's be really clear, like over here. implement the following logic. Okay, that's good to go. And then we will chat with the entire code base again, since multiple files here are gonna have to be changed. Okay, so here's the directory structure, and you can see new files that we're gonna have to create. So let's go ahead and just start creating those now. Generator, tsx, okay. Generated contents.tsx, prompt edit modal. Oops. You can see here it clearly indicates like what's new in parentheses here. So we're gonna have to create this new directory called API on this level, and then we're gonna create a new file called generate content.ts. And then looks like another, it's interesting that it decided to call this utils. Here is where our API call to OpenAI will be. And then we already have these 3 files, so we don't need to create them. Okay, cool. So now let's implement everything step by step. So just go here, app components content generator. This is again a brand new file, so it's not going to auto link to that file. And this is one of the things I wish Cursor would do, just like automatically create a file if it doesn't exist. There are other tools that can do that. For example, aider.chat. And you can even build like a little Emacs plugin, so you can just have a separate buffer that's aider, but we're just going to use this for now. Now we're going to generated contents component. Click apply. Now it's making the changes. Click accept. Boom. Now go to prompt edit modal. Okay, click accept. Make sure to hit save. Update the create page. So app/create page. Click accept. Okay, open the OpenAI utility function. So util/OpenAI. This is what's going to make the API call to OpenAI. And you can see here, like there's already some things we'll want to change. We'll need to, first of all, set up our OpenAI API key. Here it's using GPT 3.5 Turbo, which in my opinion kind of sucks for writing. We'll at least want to switch that to 4. And then the prompt itself, it's pretty weak, but again, it's fine. We just want to get everything up and running, and then we can update the prompt. Okay, and then we're going to create the API route for generate-content. So open the API folder here, click accept. Okay, and then here's a summary of what we've done. Try to read through it and like try to match where it is in the code base. A lot of the variable names and stuff are pretty readable, like generated content, content platform, so really just try to follow along as best as you can if you don't have a technical background. If you do have a technical background, then I do recommend like taking the time to kind of dig in, understand how it's structured things, because it's just going to help you get faster with it in the future. Okay, so to complete the implementation, you'll need to install the OpenAI package. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do Control-XC in the terminal to exit. And then we're going to do npm install OpenAI. Okay, and then we're going to set up the OpenAI key. Can you walk me through step number 2, setting up the OpenAI key? And here, I'm not going to chat with the entire code base because we don't need to. We could even do no context, but it's fine. We'll just hit enter so that it has the current file as context. Okay, so if you don't even have an OpenAI API key, it'll walk you through it step by step. You log in, so you create an account, log in, navigate to API section, create a new API key. Once logged in, navigate, create a new API key, make sure to copy it immediately because you won't see it again. And now we're going to set up environment variables. So in the root of this project, which is over here, like where all these files are, we're going to create a new file called .env.local. Okay. This file is used for local environment variables and is automatically ignored by Git. And then copy the open. And then we're going to add our open API key here like this. And then obviously replace this with the API key. Now that you've done that, let's update .gitignore. So here's .gitignore. And just make sure you are ignoring it. When we set up the Next.js project, it already created this file, so we actually don't have to do anything, which is great. And then we're going to set up the environment variable in our code. So go to this file and then apply and then accept. Okay, and then verify the setup. Doesn't tell us we need to do anything here. When it's talking about here client-side usage, but we're not. We're going to be calling it from the server side, which is best practice. Okay, so verify the setup. So here we're going to do in the terminal down here, npm run dev. Okay, and then let's just read this real quick. Try generating content using your application. If it works without any authentication errors, your API key is correctly set up. Okay, so let's open it up first. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to take something from my blog. Let's do this one, 2-minute hack to high quality prompts. Okay, so now we're going to enter the content here. So here's the stuff that I'm going to repurpose. I'm going to select a platform like Facebook, and also let's open the console to see if there's any errors. So here it's like right click and then click inspect. I like to put mine at the bottom over here. Okay, cool. And then hit console again. And here, if there are errors on the client side, you'll see like red stuff pop up here. And my typical workflow will be like, oh, there's an error, copy and paste it into Cursor, and then ask Cursor how to fix the error. Okay, so, but now let's click generate content. These do look like two separate errors. Like one looks like an API route is not found, and then the other one looks like a parsing issue. So let's just do one at a time. I'm gonna open up a new file. I'm gonna say, I see this error in console log, and try to like read the error, especially if you have a technical background, even if you haven't coded in a while, even if you don't code full time. Like I haven't coded regularly in the past decade, but I don't mind like reading this stuff. Like this is a post request to this route and it says it's not found. And like the quickest thing you could do is just like check if it is there. So like if we go to API folder, there is something called generate-content. And that's additional context that is helpful to feed in. So I could say I see this error in console log, even though the file API/generate-content TS exists in my project. And let's chat with the entire code base so it knows to look for that file. Okay, it seems that the API route for generating content is not being recognized. Let's troubleshoot this step by step. Ensure that generate-content.ts file is located in the correct directory. So it actually wants us to rename this file to route. Okay, name / okay, so let's create another folder here, make sure everything matches. TS, okay. Then we're gonna move this into that directory. Click move, always, update the imports. Then we're gonna rename this to route.ts, okay? Let's click save. And then it also says update the contents of the file. So let's go ahead and, okay. Update the import statement in content generator, okay? Make sure that OpenAI is over here, utils, which it is, verify that we have .env local, which we do, and then stop the current server if running, and then run again. Okay, so let's try it again. Click this. Okay, I'm gonna close the previous one. Okay, here, let's open console log again, and click generate content. Okay, new error. Generated content is not defined. Okay, so let's say unhands. This is an import error, and I do tend to run into these errors with Cursor, especially when starting up a project. I see this error in console log. Okay, the issue is a lack of import, so let's look at the relevant part of content generator.tsx. It has use clients. However, it's not importing generated content, which is also why the file is red. I should have pointed that out before. So click apply. Typically, when you see like file names that are red and stuff, that means there is an error in there. I just didn't even notice. Okay, so this changes the import. Let's try it out. Reloaded. Let me copy this again. Select Facebook. Okay, great. And so here's the generated content. Okay, great. So everything works as desired. We took a newsletter post, click generate, and then it repurposed it with a prompt. Now, obviously, this is kind of cheesy. I don't like that. So let's go to the prompt library and just like select something else. Yeah, this one I use a lot, like write a LinkedIn post with bullet points. So what we're gonna do here is just click copy raw file. Okay, so everything's copied. And then go back to cursor. And then we really just want to change the prompt over here. So we're gonna click edits, update the prompt to the following, and don't leave anything out. Let's just use triple to demarcate. Okay, let's double check. Yeah, so here it has all the examples and stuff. Submit edit. Here, those are the examples and stuff. So obviously there, like I could have just copy and paste it instead of doing this, but I just wanted to showcase this is what it looks like to change only one section of the code, because oftentimes you don't want to feed in the entire code base or even the entire file. You want to change just one function, for example, or just one variable or something. And so that's how you do that. You kind of just highlight it and then press Command K, and it'll open up Claude 3.5 Sonnets, where you provide instructions in natural language. Just describe what it is that you are trying to do. Okay, all right, now it's done. Let's click accept. Let's check everything there, make sure there's no errors. And I also want to change this to GPT 4.0. Usually find that works a lot better for writing compared to 3.5. So let's go ahead and refresh, copy that, original content, okay. Okay, and we got an error, so let's open up console log. We see internal server error. Let's see if there's anything in the terminal that could be helpful. So just scrolling. So here's the error, and then scrolling up here, there seems to be a lot more information, like error generating content, unexpected token, and is not valid JSON. Okay, so what that means is our code base is expecting valid JSON from ChatGPT, but the response was not valid JSON, which actually makes sense because in this prompt, it doesn't ask for valid JSON. So let's select this prompt again. So one approach here is to just copy paste this error and then ask cursor here. I get this error after I clicked the generate content button. So that's one approach. If you have kind of a technical background, you kind of know what the error is. Again, you could just feed it just this file or just this prompt and ask it to update the prompt asking for a valid JSON as output. So cursor basically explains the error occurs because the response is not in the expected JSON format. Let's modify the function to handle the response as plain text instead of JSON. So yeah, that's also definitely a valid thing you can do. I'll hit apply. Okay. It really just removed the JSON parse since the response is not in JSON. And by the way, if you don't want to do that, like you want to keep the JSON, like you can reply to this by clicking here and being like, no, we want to keep the JSON, like I'll update the prompt so that it outputs a valid JSON. And so again, the more technical you are, like the easier this will be to kind of like interact back and forth. And I definitely recommend thinking through what the problem could be and then comparing what your suspicion is with what Cursor AI suggests. And that way you can learn. Maybe you're wrong and Cursor is right. Maybe you're right and Cursor is missing something. And that's an opportunity for you to provide additional context or update the prompt. Okay, so here are the key changes. Now let's update the post function. Okay, apply. Let's click accept. Okay, and then these changes should fix the parsing error. Okay, so let me copy paste this, refresh this, original content, click generate. Okay, cool. And then here's the generated content. I don't see any errors. Let's expand this so we can actually read it. And now this looks much better. This looks much closer to the style I like, right? I like it with a nice hook, questions in the hook, and then bullet points, super easy to read like this. And so all we did really is update the prompt, which kind of is the fun part, right? Like once I have one place where I can do everything, like most of my time will be spent on updating prompts, updating my RAG, like my personal knowledge base and brand identity and all that stuff. But yeah, this is pretty much our V1. So if we go back to the spec, like what did we do? So we are repurposing from one platform to another. We have kind of the basic UI. We're calling the OpenAI ChatGPT API for the repurposing. We display the final repurposed content. So the one thing we're missing is this edit prompt functionality to change the prompt, which I'm going to move to V2. So the next set of features we're going to add will be the ability to edit each prompt for each social media platform and then regenerate the output if you edit the prompt. And this is really useful because like I don't use the same prompts for each platform. Like on LinkedIn, I have a different writing style than something on Twitter versus a script for TikTok. Like each one is going to use a very, very different prompt. And I personally want just one place where I can experiment with each of those prompts, easily regenerate the one that I'm working on, and then see everything kind of in one place, like the prompt and output for LinkedIn versus Facebook versus TikTok versus Twitter. So that'll be V2, the next set of features we add. So yeah, hope this was a helpful walkthrough of building the version 1 of our larger vision, an AI-powered remixing, repurposing content platform. And just to walk through, recap what we've built out, we used Cursor AI to build out the simple UI with a left sidebar, top bar, the main content creation interface, the create screen, where you can input text content. And then when you hit the button, it calls OpenAI ChatGPT to repurpose that content in a different format. And you can edit the content in line. So if you want to make a couple tweaks before you publish it on your social media platform, you can easily do that. And in the next video, we'll add different prompts for each social media platform and being able to easily edit the prompt and regenerate the output all in one place. My name's Sabrina Ramonov. Hope you are enjoying this video series, Building SaaS with AI. If you like this kind of stuff, hit like, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Look forward to hearing from you.